Among all the new features introduced with .NET 6 and C# 10, hot reload is the most talked about feature by all the .NET community. The reason being, the feature set provided by hot reload is going to tremendously improve the productivity of the developers. You know that when you are debugging any applications, you used to do the debugging in a multiple or multi-stage process. Like you make some changes to the code and then you build the project, you run it, and then you want to make some edits. Either you add a breakpoint for those that are allowed to edit, then you do that and then trigger the values, or you have to stop the application, make the changes, build, and then again start the debugging. This entire cycle is going to take your developer time. With hot reload, Microsoft is really trying to save all these efforts and make you to focus only on the debugging part. In this section, hot reload, we'll look at what is the hot reload concept, how you can apply this with your developing purpose, and what are some of the pros and cons of this approach. Before we proceed further, let's look at some of the topics we are going to cover in this section. First and foremost, we'll look at what is hot reload. Here I will explain what is this feature and why it is getting attention from all the .NET community. Next, we'll look at the supported toolsets wherein you can apply the hot reload. Here we'll cover the different types of OS, and the IDEs and the frameworks are the core monikers that supports this hot reload feature. This is followed by applying the hot reload in CLI as well as the Visual Studio IDE. So it is important to realize that hot reload can be applied in both command line interfaces as well as Visual Studio. So we'll look at with demos with these two applications as well. Finally, we'll look at some of the unsupported scenarios wherein you may not be able to use this hot reload. Although this feature has been newly introduced, there are some scenarios wherein it cannot be applied as of now. It's going to get improved as the day progresses, but as of now, we'll look at what are those some of scenarios wherein you cannot apply this hot reload. Let's get started with the first topic, namely what is hot reload. Let's begin with the first topic, namely what is hot reload. Hot reload allows changing the code during runtime when the app is running. This statement looks completely surprising for any of the existing .NET or C# developers, because you cannot change the code during runtime when the app is running in the debug or the release mode typically. Of course, during debugging you can put a breakpoint and then do minor edits. But if you are going to do any major changes like adding a new method or changing the types or some of those unsupported ones, then you end up stopping the application and then make the changes, build, and then start over the debugging session again. Then you have to do all those initial set of changes wherein you want to reproduce that issue and so on. But with this hot reload, it allows you to change the code although the application is running. Hot reload is considered as the game-changing feature of .NET with this release. Let's look at what is the need for it. The whole purpose of hot reload is to speed up your development. It's going to completely stop the process that I have explained before, like code edit, stop, build, start, initialize. So all this is going to be completely removed. In case you are going to see any of the mistakes, then you can do it at the real time. So this way you can spend less time stopping or hitting the breakpoints, changing, rebuilding, and starting your app. Moreover, it extends the existing feature of modifying the code during debugging. As I mentioned shortly, if it's going to be a minor code changes, then it's perfectly alright to use the previous feature of adding the breakpoint and updating it. But anything beyond that, then it's going to take more time for you. So hot reload basically extends that same feature and allows you to have it encompassing more feature sets. Having known about hot reload, one main point you need to remember is the hot reload works only in debug mode. It is not supported in release mode. The reason being, the whole purpose or the feature of hot reload is with respect to the debugging environment. Hence, to apply the hot reload to your application, you should be running your application in the debug mode. Once you have run in debug mode, troubleshooted the initial set of issues and make sure that it is proper, then you can consider to use in the release mode the way you have been using it before. Next, let's look at some of the supported toolset when it comes to using hot reload. Among the supported projects wherein you can use or apply this hot reload feature, this includes a vast set of arrays of features. Hot reload is supported in these project types: ASP.NET Core related projects, that includes web APIs and the MEC projects, got Blazor, .NET MA UI that has been recently introduced, console applications, Windows Forms, that includes the WinForms that you used to have create a simple forms, also WPF, as well as WinUI 3. Moreover, in case you are using with cloud using Azure Functions, then it's supported at Azure Functions as well. So as you can see, the set of projects wherein the hot reload is supported is pretty huge. Coming to the supported languages, hot reload can be used if you are developing your application in C# or VB. Currently, it is not supported for F#. Moreover, when it comes to the supported .NET frameworks or the .NET Core monikers, you can use this if you are going to target .NET 4.6 and above. Moreover, as recommended by Microsoft, it is strongly recommended to use .NET 6 to have the best experience of the hot reload feature. Hence, if you are going to create any new applications from henceforth, strongly recommended to create with .NET 6. Finally, coming to the set of IDEs, the supported IDEs are Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. You may choose either of these when you want to use this hot reload feature. Most of the enterprise is going to use Visual Studio, and in the recent times, the Visual Studio Code also has been increasing a lot. So since both supports the hot reload feature, then you can be pretty sure that the IDE that you are going to use at your work is going to support hot reload. Finally, although it's supported in different types of .NET Core monikers or frameworks, as well as different types of IDEs, it's strongly recommended to use Visual Studio 2022 along with .NET 6 to get the best experience with hot reload. It has been really optimized and it works great with this combination. Hence, if possible, you can try to migrate your projects and as well as your IDE to these versions to get the best out of them. Next, let's see how you can apply hot reload feature in a CLI. Here I have got the same Visual Studio Code and our set of web API applications. As I mentioned before, the cms.webapi and cms.data.repository are part of a web API related projects wherein it is going to expose some of the APIs for a college management system. In short, it's a part of eCampus Connect application wherein you can use the REST APIs to work with courses and students. So for this demo, I'm going to use the same web API project and we'll see how we can apply this hot reload for this project and check the behavior in Postman. To begin with, let's see what happens if we try to execute the project as is. Let's directly run this. And then for this demo, once it is loaded, I'm going to use Postman. Let me launch the Postman application. Let's create a new request. As you can see from here, it's going to point at localhost /5000. Let's go here /courses. So this specific endpoint /courses is going to give us the list of all courses available in the system. So here you can notice it has got multiple entries. Each of the course entries contains properties like ID, name, duration, and type. As I mentioned before, it's okay if you still don't get the web API or not aware of the web API projects. Just know that this is the functionality that currently being used for this demo purpose. The focus is to know the C# concepts and the new changes that has been done with C# 10. So for this application, you can assume that this is a web API project wherein it is exposed through this endpoint. Just like the courses endpoint where it is going to give you the entire collection, I have got another endpoint wherein it's going to give us a single course entry, basically an individual item. So I have got courses with ID 1, 2 and so on. So to fetch only the specific course, then I'm going to give courses /1 and then I have got only that entry. Now let's see how we can apply the hot reload. Let's say I want to change the course name from computer science to something else, during the execution of the application. So for instance, if you go here, let me shut down. Once it is done, let me go to the controller wherein it contains the snippet that corresponds to the get course. So this method is used that implements the get course functionality for the individual course ID. So for the given course ID, it is going to fetch from the repository and it is going to map it to the corresponding DTO object and return it. So we want to ideally change the name here for the demo purpose. So what I'm going to do is to start the hot reload in the case of CLI, you need to use the command dotnet watch. Some of you might be aware of this command watch, wherein it's going to watch for some of the files and it is going to trigger the rebuild and launching of the application automatically when there is any file changes. Microsoft has extended the functionality of this watch to include the hot reload feature as well. Hence, in this case, if I use dotnet watch run, then it's going to start the application and enable the hot reload. Let's see what happens. Once it is done, it's going to load the set of API endpoints. As you can see here, this is a Swagger document generated by the specific project. It's okay, we can close now. Let's go to the Postman and then execute. So we have got the same computer science. Now let's say I want to change the implementation of the get course method. I want to introduce some changes. Without hot reload, the functionality or the steps is used to be like you add a breakpoint and then you trigger it, then it comes here, the application breaks at this point, you do some change and then start. If it's going to be a major changes, then for example like adding a new function, just like get course, if you want to do something like add course, then you have to stop the application, do it and then relaunch again. But with hot reload, you can directly edit the changes. You can see that course name equals, let's say, hot reload. Okay, the indentation doesn't look good. Okay, once it is done, you can see at the bottom that it is keep triggering the file changed event and is doing the hot reload. You can see a message, hot reload of changes succeeded. So basically, I'm just setting the course name to some value called hot reload for the demo purpose. Now if I go and hit send button, you can see the course name has been updated. It's as if like a magic, right? We have not done anything apart from changing only the source code. So it means that although your application is still running, you don't need to do anything else apart from changing only the part that you want to do it. So this is extremely beneficial when you are debugging. I cannot stress the fact that how much of the developer time is going to be saved just with this single feature of hot reload. Similarly, let's go and pick, say, hot reloaded again. You can see from the bottom that it has again refreshed. Now if you go and trigger it, then you can see hot reloaded again. Moreover, when it comes to the hot reload, in the case of especially CLI, I'd like to recommend one option called the automatic save. Currently in my Visual Studio Code, I have enabled autosave for every few seconds. Let's go there, and then if you say, here you can see autosave. I have configured after delay, and the delay is going to be 1 second. Yes, you can see the autosave, and the autosave delay I have given 1 second. So it means that it is going to automatically save every 1 second. It may be the best option for you in some cases. However, in the case of hot reload, I recommend to disable this. The reason being, if you enable the autosave to save every 1 second, then as and when you keep doing the changes, it is going to keep triggering the hot reload. The better approach is to have all the changes done and then you just save the file once. So for example, here I can do like hot reload. Suppose if I have enabled the autosave, you can see the multiple changes that have been done in the past. So since I have removed it, I have done only on file save, then it's not going to trigger the hot reload. Now I am going to see, you can see from here that the file has not been saved. Once I trigger save, now you can see the changes has been applied. This is just a small point that you can keep in mind so that it is helpful when you are debugging. For this demo purpose, it's still okay for autosave to have every 1 second because it's a minor change. However, when you are doing at the enterprise project level, you are going to end up doing major changes if the business logic involves multiple changes. So in such cases, you may consider to disable it and have it only at the file level. Having seen about hot reload with CLI, next let's look at how you can apply hot reload using Visual Studio IDE. Next, let's look at how you can apply hot reload in the case of Visual Studio. Here I have got Visual Studio 2022. Here I am using one of the Windows VM to demonstrate this purpose. So within this Visual Studio, I have got the same set of CMS projects, cms.webapi and the repository. And let's go and have the controller. So this contains the default implementations. And here I have got the Postman with the same set of APIs, get all courses, as well as get individual courses. Let's open the courses controller.cs and then navigate to get course method that triggers whenever a get request is sent for individual course. The implementation is same as we saw in the Visual Studio Code. Once you launch this, then it's going to trigger the Swagger UI that we can ignore for now, and then launch the Postman. I got the same set of APIs for get all courses and individual courses. So if I execute all courses, then it's going to give us a list of all courses, and then the individual is going to give us only the single course. Here you can see computer science. Alright, now let's go and try to make some changes and use the hot reload. To use the hot reload function in Visual Studio, you have got a new icon at the top that says hot reload. If you click on the drop down, then you got some options: hot reload, restart application, hot reload on file save, and settings. By default, it's going to do the first option, is going to hot reload. Hence, when you make some changes, like we want to make it course name equals hot reload. Once you have done the change, then you can click on this button to do a hot reload. Once it is done, if you go back to your application and then trigger, then you can see that it has successfully applied the changes that we have done. Similarly, if you go and do reloaded again, and then let us look at some of the other options. Hot reload on file save. As I recommended in Visual Studio Code, I recommend you to enable this option so that the hot reload happens only during file save. So once I have enabled this, then whenever I do the file save for any of the modified files within the current project or solution, then it's going to trigger the hot reload. Now since I have made some changes, it's going to show me the changed icon, and when I click on save, then it's going to trigger a set of hot reload commands and then reload the application in the backend. Moreover, in the output screen, you can see one new entry called hot reload. That is going to show you the set of commands that happens whenever the hot reload is going to get triggered. Once done, now if you go and hit it again, then it's going to see course name as hot reloaded again. So this way you can use both CLI as well as the Visual Studio IDE to trigger the hot reload command. In case you want to restart the application and then apply all the changes, then you can consider to do restart application. In this case, it's going to restart the entire application by bringing in all the changes that you have made as well. The only difference between hot reload and then restart application is that in the case of hot reload, it's going to maintain all the changes that you have done to your application. However, in the case of restart application, any initialization that you have done in your code or in your application is going to get lost. It's like as if you are stopping the application, make the changes and then launch the application again. Suppose your application requires login or initial set of configuration that you have done manually, then you need to do it again. In most of the cases, the hot reload will be the best option along with hot reload on file save. In this manner, whenever you are debugging the application, if you want to make any changes, you can just come in, do it directly, and then just do save. Then it's going to trigger the hot reload. As a final topic in this section, let's look at some of the scenarios wherein this hot reload feature cannot be applied, wherein this is not supported for those features. Let's look at those scenarios. Hot reload cannot be applied under all circumstances. There are certain scenarios wherein the hot reload cannot be applied because it contains some limitations for supporting this hot reload feature. Hence, you need to remember that when you are debugging the applications, you cannot take it for granted to debug or to apply this hot reload under all circumstances. When it comes to those unsupported scenarios, some of the common ones are using the release or the custom config mode. As we have noted before, this works in the case of debug mode. If you are going to release, then it's not going to get supported. Similarly, if you have got any apps optimized for using trimming or ready to run, then again you cannot use the hot reload feature. Moreover, if you are using .NET native runtime apps or F# apps or even Xamarin.Forms projects, then hot reload is not supported for these different types of projects or the scenarios. Hence, just take a note of these scenarios and make your debugging a lot more better by looking ahead and see the different types of scenarios and accordingly adjusting your debugging experience. You might then be wondering what happens if you try to use the hot reload feature in these scenarios. In such cases, you will get something called root edit dialogs. This dialog is what it will shown when you are going to try to use the hot reload when it is not supported. It will force you to rebuild and apply the changes by stopping your solution and then building that and then running the application again. Having said this, although there are some scenarios wherein it cannot be applied, the number of scenarios where the hot reload can be applied is pretty large. I am pretty sure that when you are working with your .NET applications, the amount of scenarios is going to be covered by this hot reload is large and you may not feel issues when you are working with this feature. Hence, go ahead and try it out in your machine and see how you can make the best use of this hot reload feature when you are debugging your applications at your work.